When one considers the history of civilization, empires rise and fall like tides against the shore. Rome brought law and engineering, the Mongols united vast lands with horse and bow, and the Ottomans ruled as a bridge between East and West. Yet none matched the scale, influence, and enduring legacy of the British Empire. In this video, we'll look at how a small island nation built the greatest empire the world has ever seen, its humble beginnings, its global reach, and the lasting impact that still shapes our world today. The British Empire did not begin with overwhelming armies or boundless wealth. Unlike Rome, which grew from a powerful military machine, or the Mongols, who thundered across the steppes with unmatched cavalry, Britain in the 16th century was a relatively small island nation on the fringes of Europe. It lacked the resources of Spain, the manpower of France, and the prestige of the Ottoman court. Its rise was improbable, born of necessity, daring, and ingenuity. In the Elizabethan age, English adventurers and merchants set out across oceans, not with vast imperial ambitions, but with the desire to trade and compete with Iberian powers. The voyages of Sir Francis Drake, the explorations of Walter Raleigh, and the chartering of the East India Company in 1600 were tentative beginnings. Yet these ventures embodied something unique, a willingness to combine commerce, exploration, and governance in a way no empire had attempted before. Where others sought conquest, the British sought networks. Where others sought to dominate outright, the British built systems of trade, law, and administration that could adapt to local conditions. It was this flexible and pragmatic foundation that allowed the empire to grow from a fragile series of outposts into a globe-spanning system of rule. In this respect, it outstripped the Mongols, who, despite their breathtaking conquests, lacked the administrative depth to maintain what they seized. Rome, too, for all its grandeur, remained confined to Europe and parts of the Mediterranean. Britain's humble beginning was its strength. Born not of sudden conquest, but of steady expansion, it created an empire that could endure. The greatness of the British Empire was not measured only in land and people, but in the institutions and prosperity it left behind. Critics often portray empire as exploitation, and exploitation certainly existed. Yet in the long sweep of history, the British Empire distinguished itself from others by the depth of human development it fostered. Rome gave Europe laws, but Britain gave the world the modern forms of constitutional government, parliamentary democracy, and the rule of law. Today, some of the most successful nations on Earth, Canada, Australia, India, Singapore, retain systems of governance that bear the clear imprint of British institutions. Even the United States, though born in rebellion, enshrined in its constitution the principles of English common law, checks and balances, and representative governance. Where the Ottomans preserved rule through religious authority, Britain created secular frameworks that could be adopted anywhere, regardless of culture or creed. The empire also invested in infrastructure and education at a scale few empires matched. Railways in India connected distant regions, creating a unified economy and identity. Telegraphs, ports, and roads in Africa and Asia laid the groundwork for the future nation-states that emerged after independence. Universities and schools established under British influence produced generations of leaders, from Jawaharlal Nehru in India to Nelson Mandela in South Africa, who would later guide their nations into modernity. In comparison, the Mongol Empire, despite its brilliance in communication via horse relays, left behind little in the way of enduring institutions. The Ottomans and Persians built magnificent cities and courts, but their administrative legacies faded once their empires collapsed. Britain's legacy, by contrast, endured and flourished. Furthermore, the empire accelerated the spread of modern medicine, science, and technology. The Industrial Revolution, born in Britain, did not remain confined to the island. It radiated outward, transforming economies across the empire. Modern agriculture, industry, and commerce were exported to colonies, integrating them into a global system of exchange. Where earlier empires often drained their territories without leaving long-term prosperity, Britain's empire unintentionally created the frameworks of development that its former colonies still depend on today. If the prosperity it brought is one measure of greatness, the size and scale of the British Empire is another. At its zenith in the late 19th and early 20th centuries, it was the largest empire in history, covering nearly a quarter of the Earth's landmass and ruling over a fifth of humanity. It stretched from the Canadian prairies to the Indian subcontinent, from the African veld to the islands of the Pacific. It was the only empire about which it could truly be said, "The sun never sets." This vast reach was not simply a matter of land. The empire created a global network of trade, communication, and security that historians call the Pax Britannica. For a century, British naval supremacy guaranteed safe trade routes, reduced piracy, and fostered unprecedented levels of international commerce. What ultimately sets the British Empire apart from all others is the endurance of its legacy. When Rome fell, Europe plunged into centuries of fragmentation. When the Mongols collapsed, their territories dissolved into rival khanates. The Ottomans left behind architectural marvels and cultural influences, but little that defined the political systems of the nations that replaced them. Britain, however, left a legacy that remains central to the functioning of the modern world. The English language is now the global lingua franca, used in business, diplomacy, and science. The Commonwealth of Nations, a voluntary association of former colonies, illustrates that even after independence, many nations chose to maintain ties with Britain. Sports such as cricket, rugby, and football, spread by British influence, are now global passions that unite billions. Most importantly, the ideals of democracy, legal equality, and free trade that Britain championed continue to define modern civilization. Measured by size, influence, and legacy, the British Empire shaped the modern world like no other. It wasn't perfect, but its impact is undeniable. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to like, subscribe, and hit the bell for more history deep dives and fascinating stories from the past.